The grand concert hall was quiet that afternoon, the kind of quiet that felt heavy, filled with the smell of polish and faint echoes of past performances. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, bouncing off golden chandeliers and rows of velvet seats. It was a place built for beauty, for sound, for people who were born to be seen. But not everyone in that hall had come to be seen. Near the back of the stage, a woman in a faded cleaning uniform was wiping the wooden floor with slow, practiced movements. Her daughter followed close behind, carefully collecting used music sheets that had fallen under the chairs. They had done this so many times that it had become routine. Every evening when everyone else went home, they stayed behind to make sure the hall looked perfect again for the next day. The girl didn't say much. She moved quietly, her eyes often wandering to the grand piano that sat in the center of the stage. It looked like a dream, black, shining, perfect. She had seen so many people play it, their fingers moving fast, their faces glowing under the lights. Every time someone pressed the keys, the sound would fill the room like magic. But she never dared to touch it. To her, it was like something holy, something that didn't belong to her world. Her mother noticed how she looked at the piano sometimes but never said anything. Life had taught her to stay humble, to be thankful for small things. They weren't rich. They lived in a small apartment not far from the hall, and this job was what kept food on the table. The girl would come after school, helping her mother sweep, wipe, and polish until their hands hurt. But no matter how tired she was, her eyes always carried that same quiet spark when the piano caught her attention. That day, the hall was busier than usual. A group of musicians were rehearsing for a big performance. The city's most talented young pianists were set to compete that weekend. The girl's mother had been asked to clean early because the rehearsals would go late into the night. So they came while the musicians were still setting up. The girl stayed near the corner, holding a bucket and trying not to be noticed. She watched as one of the contestants sat at the piano, adjusting his seat. He looked confident, even proud, as if the piano belonged to him. The judges sat near the front row, whispering among themselves. The sound of the piano soon filled the hall, strong, technical, impressive. But to the girl it felt cold. The notes were perfect, but there was no feeling. She didn't know why she thought that, but she could tell. It was as if the piano was being played for the score, not the soul. After a few minutes, the pianist suddenly stopped. He slammed the lid of the piano and stood up in frustration. One of the judges said something about tempo, another about emotion. The pianist argued, his voice echoing across the hall, and then he stormed out, leaving everyone in awkward silence. The girl froze where she stood, clutching the handle of her bucket. She felt a strange kind of sadness, not for the pianist, but for the piano that was left alone in the middle of the stage. The lead judge sighed, looked at his watch, and told everyone to take a short break. Soon the hall began to empty. Musicians walked out, chatting softly. The judges stepped out for coffee, and even the light crew took a break outside. The cleaner and her daughter stayed behind, as they always did, working quietly. The girl looked around. The hall was empty now, and the piano sat in silence under the light. She felt her heart beating faster. She put down her bucket slowly and walked closer, as if drawn by something she couldn't explain. Her mother was still busy near the back, scrubbing the steps. The girl reached the edge of the stage and stopped. Up close, the piano looked even more beautiful. The polished surface reflected her face, a simple face tired from the day but full of quiet longing. She hesitated, glancing toward her mother, then back at the piano. Her small hand trembled as she lifted the lid. It opened smoothly with a soft creak. She stared at the keys, black and white, clean and perfect, waiting. She pressed one. Just one. The sound that came out made her heart skip a beat. It was warm, deep and pure. Nothing like the dull keyboard at home that was missing half its notes. It felt alive, like it spoke back to her. She pressed another key, then another. Slowly, she started to form a tune. Something soft and simple. A melody she had created long ago when she was alone in her room, pretending to play on air. Her mother looked up from a distance and froze. For a moment, she wanted to stop her, to tell her that touching the piano wasn't allowed, but something in her daughter's face stopped her. The girl wasn't just touching the keys, she was speaking through them. The mother stayed still, watching in silence. The melody grew stronger. The girl's fingers, though small and inexperienced, moved with surprising confidence. She played like she had been waiting her whole life for this moment. Each note seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. Her eyes closed as the sound filled the hall, wrapping around the empty seats and echoing off the high ceiling. She didn't know that someone else was listening. The hall manager, who had returned to check on the sound equipment, stopped in the doorway. He didn't move. He just stood there staring at the stage. He had seen hundreds of performances in his life, but something about this one felt different. The girl wasn't playing from sheet music. There were no fancy hand movements, no effort to impress. It was simple, but it was real. It was raw emotion in sound. The mother noticed him and quickly wiped her hands on her apron, embarrassed. But the manager raised his hand slightly, telling her not to stop the girl. He kept listening. After a while, the girl opened her eyes and saw them both watching. Her face turned pale, and she quickly took her hands off the keys. "I'm sorry," she whispered, stepping back. "I didn't mean to—" Her voice broke before she could finish. Her mother rushed forward, gently taking her arm. "It's all right," she said softly, looking at the manager with worried eyes. She didn't mean to touch it. She was just curious. The manager walked closer, his shoes clicking softly on the wooden floor. He didn't look angry. Instead, his expression was thoughtful, almost emotional. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked quietly. The girl didn't know how to answer. "Nowhere," she said, her voice trembling. "I just listen sometimes." The manager nodded slowly, still looking at her. "You have a gift," he said finally. "That song, did you make it yourself?" The girl nodded again, afraid to look up. Her mother squeezed her hand gently, unsure what to say. For a long moment, no one spoke. The hall was silent again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It felt full, as if the air itself still remembered the music she had played. The manager smiled faintly. "Don't worry," he said kindly. "You're not in trouble. But next time, maybe you should play for people who can really listen." The girl didn't know what to say. She just nodded shyly. Her mother thanked him again and led her back to their cleaning tools. As they gathered their things, the girl looked at the piano one last time. For the first time, it didn't look untouchable. It looked like something that belonged to her, even if just for a moment. When they left the hall that evening, the sun was setting outside. The girl held her mother's hand tightly, still feeling the music in her fingertips. She didn't know that what happened that day would soon change everything. That one small moment of courage would open doors she never thought existed. But for now, she was just a quiet girl walking home, her heart filled with something new, hope. The next morning, the girl woke up before the sun. She lay in bed for a few minutes, her eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling, thinking about the piano, the memory of the sound, the warmth of the notes, the way it had felt alive in her fingers and would not leave her. She had never felt anything like it before. It was as if the piano had been waiting for her, and she had finally answered. At breakfast, her mother noticed that she barely touched her food. "You didn't sleep well?" she asked gently, placing a small piece of bread in front of her. The girl shook her head but didn't say anything. Her mind was still on the piano. She wanted more than anything to be back in that grand hall, to hear the notes resonate again, but she knew it was impossible. The hall was full of musicians, judges, and rules she was not meant to break. After school, she hesitated at the entrance of the hall. Her mother was at work, cleaning the floors, and she had no particular reason to be there, yet something inside her pulled her toward it. She peeked inside through the tall glass doors. The hall was empty. Sunlight streamed through the windows just like the day before. The stage looked the same, the grand piano waiting silently in the center. She stepped inside, her shoes clicking softly against the polished floor. She felt a thrill of nervous excitement, a tiny heartbeat of fear, but it was accompanied by something else, hope. She walked slowly toward the piano, her eyes scanning every inch of it. She lifted the lid carefully, just like she had done the day before, and placed her hands above the keys. Her fingers hovered, trembling slightly. She pressed one key, then another. Slowly, the music began to flow. She played the melody she had made up herself, the one that had first come to her in her room, the one that had amazed the hall manager yesterday. This time, she was not alone in her thoughts. She imagined the hall full of people, sitting quietly, listening to every note, and her heart swelled with a strange kind of courage. As she played, she began to experiment. She added small twists, tiny changes that made the melody more complex. Her fingers moved faster now, but never clumsily. The notes danced across the empty hall, echoing off the walls, filling the room with a feeling she had never known she could create. She was no longer just a girl pressing keys. She was a storyteller, painting emotions with sound. She didn't notice the janitor who had returned to check on the stage equipment. He stopped in his tracks at the doorway, leaning against the frame silently. He had been in the hall for years, cleaning, moving things around, watching musicians come and go. He had never seen anything like this. The way the girl played, and it wasn't just skill, it was feeling. Each note carried something personal, something she alone understood. After a few minutes, the hall door opened quietly again. A young pianist who had been practicing in another room peeked in. His curiosity got the better of him. He had heard her play yesterday, but hearing her again like this was different. He stepped closer but didn't make a sound. He simply watched as her fingers moved effortlessly across the keys, creating a story that seemed far older than her years. The girl continued, unaware of her audience. She had no plan, no sheet music, no lessons guiding her. She just let her feelings lead her. There were moments of sadness, moments of joy, and moments of wonder. Every note she played seemed to reflect a part of her life, a part of her heart that she had never shared with anyone. The hall was alive with sound, yet it was quiet at the same time, as if it were holding its breath. After a while, she began to notice the figures standing around the edges of the hall. She froze, suddenly aware that she was being watched. Her cheeks burned and her fingers hesitated. The hall that had seemed so welcoming a moment ago now felt enormous and intimidating. She wanted to stop, to run back home and hide. But something inside her told her to keep going. The music was a part of her and she couldn't let fear take it away. The janitor stepped forward slowly. "You play beautifully," he said quietly. His voice made her jump. "Where did you learn to play like that?" The girl looked down, her hand still hovering over the keys. I just listen," she whispered. "I watch people and I try to play what I feel." He nodded, his eyes shining with surprise and admiration. "You have a gift," he said. "Not many people can make music like this. You feel it, not just play it." The girl's mother arrived a few moments later, returning from another part of the hall. She had seen the janitor standing there and noticed her daughter at the piano. She stopped in her tracks, a mix of worry and pride on her face. "Are you sure this is okay?" she asked gently. The janitor shook his head. "It's more than okay. It's remarkable. She should be heard, not hidden away." The girl looked down at the piano, then back at her mother. I just wanted to play," she said softly. Her voice trembled, but it carried honesty. "I didn't mean to bother anyone." Her mother smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "You're not bothering anyone," she said. "Sometimes the world needs to hear what's inside you. Don't be afraid to share it." Encouraged by these words, the girl sat down again. She took a deep breath and let her fingers dance across the keys. This time, she played with more confidence, letting her emotions guide her completely. The music was no longer just a melody. It was a story of hope, courage, and dreams too big to fit inside her small apartment. She didn't notice that other musicians had begun to gather quietly behind the curtains. They had heard the music echoing through the hall and had come to see who was playing. Some whispered to each other, astonished at the talent they were witnessing. Others simply stood in silence, captivated by the raw emotion pouring from the piano. Time seemed to disappear. The girl played for what felt like hours, her body moving with the music, her soul connected to every note. When she finally stopped, the silence in the hall was so profound it almost felt like the music had never left. She sat there, breathing heavily, unsure if anyone was even watching. Then slowly, soft claps began to break the silence. One by one, more hands joined in, until the hall was filled with applause. The girl's eyes widened. She hadn't expected this. She didn't know she could make people feel this way. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and joy. She stood up, curtsying slightly, unsure what to do next. The janitor stepped forward again. "You've got something very special," he said. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." A few of the musicians approached her, smiling. They asked her about the melody she had played, wanting to know how she came up with it. She explained shyly, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. "I just felt it," she said. "I don't really know how to explain it." One of the young pianists, the one who had peeked in earlier, nodded. "It doesn't need to be explained," he said. "You don't just play notes. You make people feel something they didn't know they could feel. That's what music is for." The girl's mother hugged her tightly, whispering how proud she was. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from happiness she hadn't known she could feel. She had always known her daughter was talented, but seeing it like this, in front of people who truly understood, was beyond anything she could imagine. That day marked the beginning of something new. The girl returned home with her mother, carrying a light in her heart she hadn't felt before. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: the piano had found her, and she had found herself in it. She practiced every evening at home, using her small keyboard, imagining the sound of the grand piano in the hall. Each note reminded her of that moment, of the warmth of the music, of the applause that had filled the empty hall. She started to write her own melodies, letting her emotions guide her fingers. It was a world she had never known she could be part of, a world full of sound, beauty, and endless possibilities. And while the grand hall had only seen her for a brief moment, it would never forget her. She had planted the seed of something extraordinary, something that would grow with each note she played, with each song she created. The girl who had once been invisible, the cleaner's daughter, had begun a journey that no one could have predicted, a journey that would take her far beyond the corners of the hall she had once swept in silence. The following week, the girl found herself returning to the grand hall more often. After school, she would wait outside until her mother finished cleaning, and then they would step inside together. Sometimes she simply sat on the stage steps, listening to the echo of her footsteps in the empty hall. Other times she approached the piano, lifting the lid and brushing her fingers over the keys as if greeting an old friend. The memory of the applause from the day before lingered in her mind, giving her courage she didn't fully understand. One afternoon, the janitor caught her just as she was about to press a key. "Are you going to play again?" he asked softly. His voice was kind, patient, not like the sharp tones she had often heard from music teachers in other places. I don't know," she admitted, her eyes glued to the piano. "I feel nervous when people hear me." "People can't hear you now," he said, gesturing to the empty hall. "Just play for yourself. Let the piano hear you. That's enough." She nodded and sat down on the bench, her small fingers hovering over the keys. Slowly, she began to play the same melody she had created the day before, letting it flow naturally without hesitation. The sound was soft, almost tentative at first, but soon it grew into a confident, flowing story. She imagined it traveling beyond the hall, reaching people who needed it, touching hearts even though no one was around. As she played, she began to notice something new. She could make the piano respond in ways she had never tried before. A softer touch made the notes delicate and tender, almost like a whisper. A stronger press made the melody bold, like it was declaring itself to the world. She experimented with pauses, letting silence hang in the air before continuing, and she realized that the space between notes could be as powerful as the notes themselves. Her mother, who was cleaning nearby, watched quietly. She didn't interrupt, didn't offer advice. She had learned long ago that her daughter needed to find her own way, to discover her own voice. Watching her now, she felt pride mixed with awe. The girl wasn't just practicing. She was learning to speak through music, to express emotions she hadn't yet found words for. After a few minutes, the hall door creaked open. The manager, who had discovered her playing a few days earlier, stepped inside. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said gently. The girl jumped, startled. I wasn't." She stopped, unsure how to explain herself. The manager smiled. "You don't need to explain. I just wanted to see you again." He paused, looking around the hall. "Do you know how rare it is to find someone who plays like you? Someone who doesn't just hit the keys but actually feels the music?" She shook her head shyly. "I don't know how to feel it. I just play what I hear in my head." "That's exactly it," he said, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. "Music is more than notes on paper. It's feeling, it's emotion, and you have that naturally." The girl's cheeks flushed. Compliments like this were new to her. Most people had told her she was small, quiet, invisible, and yet here was someone telling her that what she did had value, that it mattered. Her heart raced as she tried to focus on the piano again. "You know," the manager continued, "there's a recital coming soon. Some of the city's most talented young pianists will be performing. I think you should consider playing." Her eyes widened. "Me? But I'm not ready. I've never performed in front of anyone." "Performing doesn't mean being perfect," he said kindly. "It means sharing yourself. And you have something to share that no one else has. People need to hear it." The girl looked at the piano. She thought about the empty hall, The warm sound of the keys under her fingers, the way the music seemed to fill her whole body. She imagined the hall full of people, their eyes on her, their hearts open to whatever she played. Fear prickled at the back of her neck, but beneath it was a spark, a small, bright fire of courage. I'll try, she said softly. The manager smiled as if he had been waiting for her to say that. Good, that's all anyone can ask. Just be yourself. Over the next few days, she practiced tirelessly, using her small keyboard at home, imagining how it would feel to sit in the grand hall, facing an audience. Each day she added new touches to her melody, experimenting with tempo, dynamics, and emotion. She wanted the music to speak not just from her fingers, but from her heart. Her mother watched her closely, helping in small ways, moving furniture so she could stretch her arms, reminding her to eat, bringing her water. She never gave instructions or criticism. She simply supported her daughter, knowing that the girl's journey was hers alone. The day of the recital arrived, and the grand hall buzzed with excitement. Chairs were arranged in neat rows, the stage shone under the bright lights, and judges whispered quietly among themselves. The girl and her mother arrived early, slipping in quietly while the hall was still being prepared. The girl's heart pounded as she saw the crowd, the bright lights, the vastness of the space she had only known empty. Her mother squeezed her hand. Remember, she said softly, just play what you feel. Don't worry about anyone else. The music is yours. The girl nodded, taking a deep breath. She felt her nerves, but she also felt something else, a quiet determination. She had come this far. She had let herself play when no one was watching, and that had been enough to give her courage. Now it was time to let the world hear her. When her name was called, she walked to the stage slowly, feeling the eyes of the audience on her. Every step felt heavier than the last. She reached the piano and hesitated, her hands hovering over the keys. Then she remembered the empty hall, the way the music had filled it, the applause that had surprised her. She remembered the words of the manager, the encouragement of her mother, and she pressed the first key. The sound rang out clear and pure, echoing across the hall. The audience fell silent, captivated by the unexpected depth and emotion in such a young performer. The girl's fingers moved with confidence now, flowing naturally, telling a story that words could never capture. She played with joy, sadness, wonder, and hope, emotions she had only ever felt privately, now shared openly with everyone. People in the audience leaned forward, listening intently. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. The judges, who had seen countless performances, were struck by the depth of feeling. Every note, every pause, every movement of her hands told a story that resonated far beyond the technical skill required to play it. The girl played as if the piano had become a part of her body. Her emotions guided her fingers, and the audience felt every note. She lost herself in the music, forgetting the crowd, forgetting the stage, forgetting everything but the melody that had been living inside her for so long. When she finished, the hall was silent for a moment, as if no one could believe what they had just heard. Then the applause began, soft at first, then growing louder and louder until it filled the room. People stood clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes. The girl blinked, stunned, unsure what to do. She had never experienced anything like this. The music she had thought only belonged to her had touched hundreds of people in ways she had never imagined. Her mother rushed to the stage, embracing her tightly. "You did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You did it, and you were amazing." The manager stepped forward, smiling proudly. "I told you," he said. "You have something special. Never stop sharing it." The girl looked at the piano, then back at the audience, and felt a sense of belonging she had never known. For the first time, she understood that her music was not just her own. It was a gift, something that could touch the hearts of others, something that could change the way people saw her, and even the way she saw herself. That night, as they left the hall, the girl felt different. She walked a little taller, her heart a little lighter. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy, but she also knew she had found her voice, and with it, the courage to face anything the world could throw at her. The day of the big recital had arrived, and the grand hall was alive with energy. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, reflecting off the chandeliers and glimmering on the polished wooden floors. Rows of chairs were filled with people who had come to watch the city's most talented young musicians. Parents whispered to each other, judges flipped through their notes, and backstage musicians paced nervously. The girl stood quietly behind the curtain, her hands pressed together, her heart racing so fast she could feel it in her throat. Her mother stood beside her, squeezing her hand gently. "Remember," she whispered, "just be yourself. Play what's in your heart. That's all anyone can ask." The girl nodded, taking a deep breath, but the nerves remained. She had practiced countless hours in the quiet of her home, in the empty hall, even when no one was watching. But now, in front of this crowd, the piano felt bigger, the hall louder, and the eyes of so many strangers heavier on her. She wanted to hide, to disappear, but she knew she couldn't. Not now. When her name was called, she stepped onto the stage. The bright lights made her squint, and for a moment she froze. The audience seemed enormous, and her hands felt suddenly small and weak. But she remembered the janitor's words, the encouragement of the manager, and her mother's faith in her. She walked slowly to the grand piano in the center, lifted the lid, and sat down. Her fingers hovered over the keys. The silence of the hall was intense. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She pressed a key, and the first note rang out. It was pure, warm, and alive. The audience inhaled as the music began to flow, filling every corner of the hall. She started with the melody she had created, soft and gentle at first. Then, as she grew more confident, she added small twists and turns, improvisations that made the music her own. Each note was an emotion, each pause a thought. She played not just with her fingers, but with her whole body, leaning into the piano, feeling the vibration of each key through her arms, her chest, her very soul. The audience was captivated. They had expected another young pianist playing perfectly according to the rules, but this was different. There were no rigid patterns, no rehearsed stiffness. There was only honesty, only feeling. Some people closed their eyes, letting the music take them somewhere far away. Others leaned forward, unable to look away, mesmerized by the story unfolding before them. Backstage, some of the older musicians whispered to each other. "Who is that?" one asked. "She's incredible. It's like she's playing from a place deeper than skill alone." The girl didn't notice any of this. She was lost in her own world, the music guiding her, shaping her, showing her something she had never known about herself. The melody grew bolder, more daring, flowing into parts she hadn't tried before. She felt fear, excitement, joy, and sorrow all at once, and she let each emotion pour into the piano. The judges were equally stunned. They had seen hundreds of performances, but none like this. Here was a young girl who had no formal training, no polished technique that came from years of lessons, and yet every note she played was perfect in its own way. It had life, it had heart, it had a presence that could not be taught. Halfway through her performance, she noticed a few people in the front rows who had started to rise quietly to their feet. The audience was holding its breath, mesmerized. She felt her chest tighten, but it didn't stop her. She played on, letting the music swell and flow. She remembered the empty hall, the way she had first let the piano hear her, and she knew that no matter how many eyes were on her now, she was doing the same thing, sharing herself. When the final notes lingered in the air, the hall was silent for a heartbeat. Then it happened. The applause started, soft at first, then louder, building until it became a roar. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. The girl froze, overwhelmed by the reaction. She had never expected this. She had never imagined her music could touch so many people so deeply. Her mother rushed onto the stage, hugging her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered over and over. "You did it, and you were amazing." The manager stepped forward, clapping as well. "I told you," he said, smiling. "You have a gift. Never hide it. Never stop sharing it." The girl looked at the audience, still standing, still clapping. She realized something in that moment. The music was no longer just hers. It belonged to everyone who had listened, everyone who had felt it in their hearts. She had started with a simple desire to play, and now she had moved hundreds of people with her sound. A few of the older pianists approached her, smiling and shaking her hand. "You're extraordinary," one said. "I've never heard anything like that." Another nodded in agreement. "Your music, it tells a story. That's something most of us spend years trying to learn." The girl's cheeks burned with embarrassment and pride. She didn't know what to say. Words felt small compared to the music that had just flowed from her. She simply nodded, trying to absorb all the praise without letting it overwhelm her. Backstage, the janitor who had discovered her days ago watched silently, a smile on his face. He had known from the first moment that she had something special, but even he was amazed by the way she had transformed the hall with her music. He felt proud, not just because of her talent, but because of the courage she had shown in sharing it with the world. After the applause finally died down, the girl stood by the piano, trembling slightly but smiling. She had done something she had never thought possible. She had faced her fear, shared her heart, and been seen for who she truly was. The hall had once been intimidating, a place where she felt small and invisible. Now it felt alive, welcoming, and full of possibility. Her mother took her hand, leading her off the stage. "You've changed everything today," she said softly. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone who heard you." The girl looked back at the grand piano, its surface gleaming under the lights. She felt a deep connection to it, a bond that went beyond the notes or the music. It had given her a voice, a way to share what she could not say with words. And in return, she had given it life, letting its sound carry her emotions to the world. That night after the recital, the girl lay in bed, unable to sleep. Her mind replayed every note, every smile in the audience, every clap, every tear. She thought about how far she had come, from a quiet girl in the back of a hall, invisible, overlooked, to someone who had touched hundreds of hearts in a single performance. She realized that this was only the beginning. The world was bigger than her small apartment, bigger than the empty hall she had first played in. There were other stages, other pianos, other people who needed to hear her music, and she would play for them. She would play not for fame, not for recognition, but because she had found something inside herself that demanded to be shared. The next morning, she returned to the hall. The cleaners were busy as usual, preparing the space for the next day. But now the girl walked with her head held high, no longer shrinking into the shadows. She approached the grand piano, lifted the lid, and let her fingers hover above the keys. She felt the same warmth as always, but now it was stronger, more certain. The janitor passed by and nodded. "Ready to play again?" he asked, smiling. She nodded. "Yes," she said, and this time she didn't hesitate. She pressed the first key and the music flowed effortlessly. It was as if the hall itself recognized her now, as if it had been waiting for her return. Each note was confident, bold, and full of emotion. For the first time, the girl understood the true power of her gift. It wasn't just about playing well or hitting the right notes. It was about courage, about daring to show who she was, about trusting that her music could reach hearts and change lives. As the hall filled with her sound once more, she felt a quiet joy deep in her chest. She was no longer just the cleaner's daughter. She was a musician, a storyteller, and a young girl with a voice that the world could not ignore. And this time, she knew, she was ready for whatever came next. The weeks after the recital were a whirlwind for the girl and her mother. Life had changed in ways they had never imagined. Word of her performance spread quickly through the city. People talked about the quiet, shy girl who had taken the stage and left hundreds of people speechless. Invitations arrived for private concerts, youth music programs, and even a chance to study with some of the city's most respected music teachers. But through it all, the girl remained the same, humble, curious, and deeply connected to her music. Her mother tried to keep things simple. They continued their small routines, cleaning the halls, walking home together, cooking their modest meals. But now, there was excitement in their steps, a light in their eyes. The girl still practiced, every day, sometimes on her small keyboard at home, sometimes in the grand hall when it was empty. She was learning that talent alone was not enough. Discipline, persistence, and heart were just as important. One morning, the girl received a letter in the mail. It was an invitation to perform at a prestigious city concert, a stage even larger than the recital hall where she had amazed everyone. Her hands shook as she read it, her eyes wide. She ran to show her mother, who read it carefully, a wide smile spreading across her face. "This is it," she said softly. "They want you to play for real, in front of so many people. But remember, it's just another chance to share your music. Nothing more." The girl nodded, but inside a storm of emotion swirled. Excitement, fear, doubt, and hope all at once. She had faced an audience before, yes, but this was different. The stage would be bigger, the crowd larger, the expectations higher. For a moment she wondered if she could do it, if she could step forward and play without faltering. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "You can," she said simply. "You already know how to play from your heart. That hasn't changed. Trust yourself." The days leading up to the concert were filled with preparation. The girl practiced relentlessly, sometimes for hours without stopping, exploring new melodies, experimenting with emotion and technique. Each session left her hands sore, but her heart full. She learned that music was more than just notes. It was a story, and she was the storyteller. Every note she pressed carried her feelings, her experiences, her dreams. The day of the concert arrived, and the city hall was magnificent. The chandeliers gleamed. The stage was polished to perfection, and the seats were filled with people eager to witness the performance. The girl felt her stomach twist in knots. The magnitude of the moment was overwhelming. She thought of her mother waiting in the back, the janitor who had first believed in her, and all the people who had encouraged her along the way. She stepped onto the stage, her small fingers trembling slightly. The bright lights made it hard to see the audience, but she could feel their presence. She approached the piano and paused, taking a deep breath. For a moment, fear threatened to take hold. But then she remembered the empty hall, the music that had first brought her joy, the applause that had once surprised her. She remembered the love for the piano that had lived in her heart since she was a little girl. She pressed the first key, and the hall fell silent. The sound was clear, resonant, and full of life. She began to play, letting her emotions guide every movement. The melody flowed naturally, growing in confidence and beauty. The music spoke of her journey, the quiet girl behind the cleaning cart, the hours of practice alone, the courage to step forward and share what had always been hers. The audience was captivated. Parents and teachers, musicians and students all listened with rapt attention. The girl's performance was unlike anything they had heard. It wasn't just skill, it was feeling, honesty, and passion. Each note carried a piece of her soul, and every pause was a breath in the story she was telling. Halfway through her performance, the girl allowed herself to close her eyes. She remembered the day she had first pressed a key in the empty hall, the way the sound had made her heart flutter. She remembered the applause that had followed, the encouragement of the janitor, and her mother's unwavering belief in her. She let all of that guide her fingers, letting the piano sing in a way that was entirely her own. By the time the final notes floated into the air, the audience was silent for a heartbeat, caught in the beauty of what they had just witnessed. Then the hall erupted in applause, louder and more powerful than anything she had ever experienced. People stood, cheering, some crying, some clapping until their hands hurt. She blinked, overwhelmed, tears of joy streaming down her face. She had done it. She had shared herself fully, and the world had listened. Her mother rushed onto the stage, enveloping her in a tight embrace. "You were incredible," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "I knew you could do it, but I never imagined it would be like this." The concert manager approached, smiling broadly. "You've changed everything today," he said. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone who heard you. You've shown them what music really is: emotion, courage, and honesty." The girl felt a warm pride rise inside her, but it was accompanied by humility. She knew this was only the beginning. There were more stages, more audiences, more music to play. But she also knew that she would never lose sight of why she played, because it filled her heart, and in turn, the hearts of others. After the concert, invitations came pouring in. Music schools, youth programs, and even private mentors offered opportunities she had never dreamed of. But the girl remained grounded, focused on what mattered most: her music. She continued to practice daily, learning new pieces, composing her own melodies, and exploring the emotions that each note could convey. Her mother watched with pride, helping in quiet ways, never pushing, always supporting. She understood that her daughter's gift was more than talent. It was courage, heart, and the ability to share herself with the world. She also understood that fame and recognition were not the goal. The goal was for the girl to remain true to herself, to keep playing from the heart. One evening, the girl was invited back to the very hall where it had all started. The janitor, now smiling widely, led her to the grand piano. She ran her fingers over the keys, feeling the familiar warmth, the comfort, the connection. It was a full-circle moment. From a quiet, unnoticed girl to a young musician who had touched hundreds of lives. She played for herself first, letting the music fill the empty hall. Each note reminded her of the journey she had taken, the struggles she had overcome, and the courage it had taken to share herself with the world. Then, as the hall filled with people who had come to celebrate her, she played again, letting her music reach every corner, every heart. The applause that followed was thunderous, but it was different this time. It wasn't just surprise or admiration. It was respect, love, and recognition for the journey she had taken, for the courage she had shown, and for the music that had always lived inside her. The girl realized something that night. Talent was a gift, but courage and heart were what made it truly extraordinary. It wasn't about being the best or being famous. It was about being true to yourself, sharing what you loved, and touching the lives of others along the way. As she walked home with her mother that evening, the city lights sparkling around them, she felt a sense of peace she had never known. The piano would always be a part of her life, guiding her, inspiring her, giving her a voice that the world could not ignore. She had begun as a quiet, invisible girl, but now she carried herself with a quiet confidence, knowing that she could face any challenge, any audience, any stage. Her mother squeezed her hand. "You've come so far," she said softly. "And I know this is only the beginning." The girl nodded, her eyes shining. She knew it was true. There would be more concerts, more challenges, more music to create. But no matter where life took her, she would always remember the first time she pressed a key in that empty hall and discovered the music that lived inside her. That was the moment she had found herself, and nothing could ever take it away. And so the cleaner's daughter, who had once been invisible and overlooked, became a young musician whose courage, heart, and music left a mark on everyone who listened. Her story was not just about talent. It was about hope, perseverance, and the power of believing in yourself. The grand hall had witnessed the beginning, but the world beyond it would hear her song for years to come.